Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classics, less known classics. Excuse me. This is episode number 1644 and Doubleshot number 1538. I have two Marvel trades. The first one is kind of the finale in a way, mostly for this writer's run for this particular series. This is X-Men by Jonathan Hickman, Volume 3. Yeah, this is going to be the last of the regular trade series to collect issues from X, because the next thing comes after this is Hefagella. And the only other thing Jonathan Hickman did for the X franchise after this run wrapped up was basically the current X Inferno series, which the final issue is supposed to come out next month. Now, each issue basically does its own thing. First, you have a short story from the Reign of X, dealing with just the aftermath of the X of Swords crossover, which I love. This crossover was really good. Now, they try to have Akaro, that's the island where Apocalypse's wife is from, and Krakatoa merge. And it doesn't work. According to Doug Ramsey, aka Cypher, he mentions to the Quiet Council the reason why, because they're not interested, and two, they don't like each other. And that said, this discussion is pretty much tabled after that. Yep. And that's the opening issue. The issue 17, which basically, I should point out though, each of these issues have got their own individual artists on it. Yes, each issue does, which is quite strange. You have 5 issues in here, and the only artist stays on more than one issue is the third artist. 4 artists in here. Yes, you have Phil Noah, who does issue 16, Brett Booth does issue 17, which, by the way, the artwork in here feels like it's from the 1990s. Muhammad Al-Sur does 18, 19, and 20 is done by Francisco Mobile. I'm sorry to mispronounce that. Now, Leonard Francis Hughes still does the cover art right here. Yeah, he still does the cover, despite the fact he doesn't do the interiors anymore. And Sonny Gotho as the other artist. Now, basically, what they included here is from the Reign of X trades, because those publish the actual stories in chronological order. Now, 16, aside from dealing with the whole thing with Krakatoa, it's mostly that's mostly in a way a little bit of setup for what happens next. Now, I should point out though, in issue 16, you see Jean Grey wearing her first individual costume. That's not one of the costumes. And then by the very next issue, we deal with the Sheer Empire. Yep. And by the way, the art looks very much like the 1990s. I do like this style. It's interesting now. I should point out that this is Brett Booth's artwork. And you're thinking, Brett Booth, does she have all the color tones with it? Well, my guess is the colorist he normally works with is not here. This is done in the style what people will like from the early 1990s. This is basically done in a similar style. This may have been the same colorist who worked on Jim Lee's artwork from the 1990s, because it looks very similar color art style. Oh, and here's something though. We have Cyclops Jean Grey. Despite the fact in the previous issue, yes, the very previous issue of this run, we have Cyclops wearing his most recent attire. Let's see if I can get a better picture of it here. Yes. Yeah, we have him wearing this very attire right here, which is very similar to the artist from by Michael Bendis. This is just different color scheme. He wears this in issue 16. By the way, Kid Cable, no longer around. And in 17, he changes costumes between issues, where him and Jean Grey are now wearing their old X-Factor costumes. Yes. Basically, first time these two have worn these two costumes since 1991. Yes. Making this the first time in almost 30 years they have put on these two costumes. Also, Brett Booth decided to make Jean Grey. Yeah, I get the fact she's smoking hot, but man, the artist made her like pretty much like a bodybuilder. Which, don't have a problem with that, but man, I get the fact Cyclops got a 6-pack. That's fine, but Jean Grey, wow, it's like Brett Booth gave her a little more muscle than usual, and of course Storm is wearing her most recent attire in here. Yeah, and mostly this is just the issue where you have the X-Men once again team up with the Sheer Empire to deal with this alien threat who I think just appears in this one issue. Let me take a look here. I think he just appeared in this one issue, if I'm not mistaken. God, Phillips. Yes. His name is There's not much information about him. Not really, no. Mostly, you can kind of think of this as basically the X-Men having a connection to this particular issue, a connection to John Hickman's issues from New Mutants. That's the best way you can describe this issue. Now, as for the very next issue, by the way, we have a return of Smasher. Yes, Cannonball's beautiful wife and the mother of his only child. Which, by the way, Josh Gertrude right there. Cannonball's son. Who, by the way, this boy is named after Cannonball's late brother, Icarus, who at one point calls himself Jay. And here's something quite strange, though. His brother is still dead, despite the fact he's a mutant. That's kind of surprising. But there's a revelation that happened. There was miniseries included this week that I will talk about this when I talk about the X-Men: The Trial of Magneto miniseries. Yep. But 17 is really good. And it is shocking to see a Brett Booth issue that looks not like blinded. It's actually really good artwork. Yes. Now, 1819 is a two-parter. We have Darwin, Laura, aka Wolverine, and I know Darwin's way. I'm trying to think. What is the name of the other guy? Because you have three X-Men here. It is Sench. Yes, he's a character from Generation X. Yeah, he's from Generation X. And he is, well, working with the X-Men here. Now, basically, this is a two-parter dealing with the return of the Children of the Vault. Which, here's a fun fact for you. Their appearance issue 5, which was published in the very first trade for this particular run, that was the first appearance in 10 years. Yes. Mike Carey created this group when he first started his run for X-Men Volume 2 in, I think this was in 2007, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was 2007, I think it was. Yeah, created there. And then after, basically, he wrapped up his run for... He brought back briefly in the Collision story arc during his run. And after that, nothing for 10 years. And then they pop up in this very book. Mostly put over here because of the whole mother mold robot thing. And here, it's kind of revisiting of that. And we also have, sort of in the way, this two-parter, starting a romance between Laura McKinley and Snitch of Generation X. Yep. There's at one point they spend like 20 years in the world of the Vault, show of the Vault, and then when they get out, they're basically back to normal. And it's implied. By the way, at one point you have several times basically where Snitch is staring at Laura, and she's like, "What?" But the second time he stares at her, she's completely naked. Yes. And at one point, she was captured by the Children of the Vault, and she basically had her head shaped bald for some reason. I don't know if that's a nod to Extinction. It might be. And then after that, the final issue of this trade deals with Mystique. This is actually the first Mystique story since issue 6. The whole point of this issue is that it's just set up for the Inferno miniseries, where Mystique does a mission, still wants her wife back, and they apparently have no idea what she's talking about. And at the end of the issue, we had the return of Moira McTaggart. Yes. Who, by the way, had at this point in time, had not made an appearance since they did the whole entire crossover House of X, Powers of X. Excuse me. Yes. Yeah, that was by far her first appearance since then. Yeah, it just seems as though, as soon as that miniseries Powers Back wrapped up, she did not appear again until that very issue. Yeah, you're thinking, really? What the heck took her so long to return? Honestly, I have no idea. It's one of the most baffling things that Marvel has done with the character. Like, she pops up for this very issue. She also briefly popped up for an issue for X of Swords. But after this issue, her next appearance is Inferno. Yes, that is her next official appearance. But yeah, this is pretty much the end of... This is the last issue we have for Jonathan Hickman's run for X-Men. We're not done with his run for X-Men just yet. No, I'm not getting my final thoughts on it. Because still got Hellfire Gala and the Inferno miniseries. And that's it. Yep, that's all that's left to go for his run for X-Men. But in the case of this trade, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's a damn good trade. And, well, I'm just very happy that Laura's back in Wolverine. I kind of wish she got an ongoing series. Alright, next up, we're going back in time from 2011 to, get this, about 2017, I think it was. We have Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, Volume 1. Back in the Hood. This collects the first 5 issues of the Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider ongoing series, and the short story from Clone Conspiracy. Yeah, it's the Ben Reilly one where he gets money from a woman's IRA account, which I've discussed this before. When I discussed, I think it was the Clone Conspiracy trade here, hardcover, which I discussed that before. I think it was just a year or two ago I discussed that. Which I did mention in that video that the whole thing of an IRA account, that is real. I work with some people basically who set some. It's basically a very special bank account. It's almost like a retirement fund, and apparently she has so much money to basically go on Broadway, but instead he goes to Las Vegas. Now, he does not put in this costume in the first issue. Oh no. To start with, he doesn't even wear this costume. Nope, he doesn't. By the way, Mark Bagley does the artwork. Yes, that's who does pretty much the artwork for this book. Now, let me introduce you to the costume he wears at first. Yes, this is the first costume Ben Reilly wears when he starts his run. At the end of issue 3, he gets the original costume back, which in my opinion, this is better. Now, when this book came out a few years ago, this was back in... I was right, about 2017. Yeah, a lot of people wrote this off as basically Peter David writing Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider as Deadpool, because he got this bigger face. And he still has his... I think he still has this currently, despite I think he's currently appearing in like 2 books now. He basically was, as soon as the series wrapped up, his next appearance for a member was actually pages of Iron Man, which made him a supporting character in that book, and now he's back being the starring character in Amazing Spider-Man for the Beyond story arc, which, from what I've heard, is going to wrap up in March. Yeah, it's going to wrap up in March, which that's going to be interesting. Mostly putting up Ben Reilly set up shop in Las Vegas. I mean, why the heck not? Also, here's a fun fact for you. Guess who was the last known Marvel superhero to operate out of Las Vegas? You want a hint for that? He never appears in his book. But you want to know who it is? The Hulk. Yep. I think that's the reason why Peter David had Scarlet Spider operate out of Las Vegas, because he has experience writing a character in Las Vegas, the Hulk, during his classic run from the 80s. Yes. I think that was a very interesting idea, because here's the thing. Like, I think there must be a rule at Marvel. I think Kamala Khan is one of the few exceptions about this, where it's like, it's just me or like every single superhero at Marvel Comics has to operate in New York City. You can operate other places. I mean, Miss Marvel operates in New Jersey. You have, I think Blackwood operates on the West Coast, in San Francisco. She's back there now. I know that the Prowler operated out of there prior to this book coming out. And Daredevil. But, yep. But Las Vegas? No, not really. First time since, like I said, the 80s that anybody's ever operated in Las Vegas. And he runs the old lady, calls, her name is June, which he plays out the fact he might be her nephew, because, well, Peter Parker's got a Aunt May, he has Aunt June. Also, he plays off his, well, even though he's a clone, He says, well, despite the fact he was the Jackal, because they reference that here a few times, which I thought was kind of baffling, the fact he even was the Jackal, which makes no frickin' sense he even was, but that's what Dan Slott wrote. So, he's basically working with a woman to cure her daughter, and they reference themselves a happened clone conspiracy, because of course they had to, because it just happened. Not surprising, the fact they would bring up clone conspiracy and mention that New U Technologies had this old cloning technology thing, which, by the way, it's still around. Yes, for some reason, it was explained in the pages, I think it was Ravencroft. They use this very technology to bring back Alicia Kravenoff. By the way, the current Alicia Kafka, Ashley Kafka, the one who currently appears, most recently, brought back recently, works for Ravencroft Institute. She's a clone of the original one. The original one died back in Space Runner 5. So, it's interesting how Dan Slott introduced the technology the clone techniques New U Technologies did. And here, there's not much of it, despite the fact we reference clones here. Ben Reilly has no interest in clones at all. And then at some point, he runs to a fan group, which, one of them is wearing his old costume. You have another one who's wearing, get this, Amazing Spider-Man costume, and another one wearing the Miguel O'Hara costume from 1990s. And of course, Peter David would reference Spider-Man 2099. He created him. I don't have a problem with this, because I like Peter David's work. And he tells the guy who's wearing his own costume, give me your costume, because you said my costume sucks. And he does. He puts on the costume, and by the way, still wears the same costume. May not be the same costume from the 1990s, but pretty much, basically, you could say here that Ben Reilly stole this costume from a guy who was a big fan of his. Yep. And you might think, okay, does this book have any villains, per se? Well, not really. We also have, basically, get this. We also have Kane make an appearance in here, because he's the other Scarlet Spider, so why the heck not? Yep. He doesn't here just to foil whatever Ben Reilly has going on. Which, I don't mind that at all, the fact that these two don't like each other. I mean, this is something that was a nod to the 1990s. I mean, look at this. That's the original Miguel O'Hara costume. Now, Miguel O'Hara, you might be asking, was he operating this period of time in the 616 universe? The answer is yes. Yes, he was. I believe this book had just wrapped up prior to this book coming out. Yes. So it's nice, though, that Peter David got a chance to, in a way, write in Spider-Man 29. That's why I can have him there. So he gives his Aunt June her own room. By the way, his face still disfigured. I would think, though, he would basically find a way to fix his face, but nope, he hasn't done it yet. And, of course, he gets out with Kane, because of course he does. He fights him for a few issues, fights a group of ninjas. And then you have basically the woman he's working with, and like her daughter, and that's it. The best way you can describe these first few issues, it's just basically setting up the run for Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider, which, by the way, this series doesn't last very long. Nope. Now, I've technically used Doctor Strange Damnation issues, so would I be reviewing more trades this one going forward? Yes. Yes, I will. I'm going to give this book roughly I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Yes. Yeah. But the Ben Reilly Scott's, not much else to say about this book. I mean, it's interesting for what it is. I believe this book lasted for 25 issues, if I'm not mistaken. Was it? Yeah, 25 issues. It actually ended like a little over a year after this book started. Yeah, the book started actually back in April 2017, and oh yeah, you might be asking, Nick, what was this series? Did this series ever suffer through any delays during its release? No. It's just that starting issue 7, they decided to double up the issues. Occasionally, I think once every couple months, it would double up the issues. But that's pretty much what the book did. Yes, so out of the 25 issues, I officially reviewed 8 out of 25. But I still got a while to go. As for paperbacks altogether, there are 4 left. Yep, there are 4 left to go. Yeah, 4 more left to go, and then that'll be pretty much it for Manuel Scott Spider. Will I get the rest soon? Possibly, yes. Okay, so that's episode review. Next is going to be Baruto, okay? Next video. Bye.